Inspector Zekthara stepped off the transport ship and onto the docking platform of Luna Station. Her tall, thin body moved with careful precision as her compound eyes took in everything around her. The clicking sound her mandibles made echoed in the metal corridors as she walked. She had inspected dozens of worlds for the Galactic Federation, but Earth was different. The humans were new to the Federation, and everyone wanted to know what they were really capable of. Captain Jake Morrison waited for her at the main entrance. He was a human male in his 50s with gray hair at his temples and deep lines around his eyes. He wore a dark blue uniform with silver bars on his shoulders. Something about his relaxed posture bothered Zekthara. Most species became nervous when the Federation came to inspect their defenses. This human seemed almost amused. "Welcome to Luna Station, Inspector," Morrison said with a slight smile. "I'm Captain Morrison, and I'll be your guide today. Admiral Barnes is waiting for us in the command center." Zekthara clicked her mandibles twice, which was her species' way of showing acknowledgement. "I am here to evaluate Earth's defensive capabilities, Captain Morrison. I trust you have prepared all necessary documentation and system access codes." "Of course," Morrison replied, leading her down a bright corridor lined with windows showing the Earth below. "Though I think you'll find our approach to defense is somewhat different from what you're used to." They entered a large room filled with screens and control panels. Admiral Lisa Barnes stood at the center, studying a holographic display of the solar system. She was a human female with short brown hair and sharp green eyes that seemed to notice everything. When she turned to greet them, Zekthara saw the same strange confidence that Morrison displayed. "Inspector Zekthara," Barnes said, extending her hand in the human greeting gesture. "Welcome to our home system. I understand you need to see our defensive arrangements." Zekthara touched the human's hand briefly, then pulled out her electronic tablet. "Yes, Admiral Barnes. The Federation requires all member worlds to maintain adequate defenses. I need to catalog your orbital defense platforms, shield generators, and fortress stations." Barnes and Morrison exchanged a quick look that Zekthara didn't miss. There was something they weren't telling her. "Well," Barnes said slowly, "let's start with what we have, and then we can discuss our overall strategy." The tour began with Luna Station itself. Zekthara was impressed by the facility's size and technology, but she noticed it wasn't built like a fortress. The walls were strong, but not thick enough to withstand heavy bombardment. The weapon systems were adequate, but not overwhelming. This station could defend against raiders or small fleets, Zekthara noted on her tablet. But it would not stop a serious invasion force. "You're absolutely right," Morrison agreed cheerfully. "Luna Station isn't designed to stop an invasion." Next, they visited Earth's orbital shipyards. Zekthara saw dozens of ships under construction, but they were all wrong. Instead of massive battleships designed to guard fixed positions, she saw sleek vessels built for speed and long-range operations. The weapons were powerful, but focused on precision strikes rather than area bombardment. "These ships are designed for attack missions," she observed, her mandibles clicking with confusion. "Where are your defensive monitors? Your system patrol vessels?" "We don't really use those," Barnes explained, pulling up a display showing ship positions throughout the solar system. "Our ships are designed to go wherever they're needed." As they continued the inspection, Zekthara's confusion grew. Earth had no massive shield generators protecting the planet, no orbital weapons platforms covering every approach route, no fortress moons bristling with defensive weapons. Instead, she found something she had never seen before in decades of inspections. Scattered throughout human space were thousands of small, fast ships. Each one was equipped with powerful engines, advanced sensors, and enough firepower to destroy much larger vessels. They weren't arranged in defensive formations around Earth. Instead, they were spread across hundreds of star systems, positioned to strike anywhere in the galaxy within days. "I don't understand," Zekthara said, her voice carrying the high-pitched tone her species used when confused. "Your homeworld is completely exposed. Any enemy fleet could approach Earth and attack before your scattered ships could return to defend it." Morrison's smile grew wider. "Inspector, I think you're looking at this backwards." Backwards, Admiral Barnes stepped closer to the holographic display, which now showed the positions of human ships across a 50-light-year radius around Earth. Red dots marked human vessels, and Zekthara was amazed to see how far they extended into space. Most species build walls around their homes, Barnes explained. They create layers of defense to protect what matters to them. It's a natural instinct. Of course, Zekthara replied. How else would you protect your world? By making sure no one ever gets the chance to attack it, Morrison said simply. Zekthara stared at him. I do not understand. Barnes touched a control and the display changed. Now it showed not just human ship positions but their operational ranges. Zekthara's compound eyes widened as she realized that human vessels could reach virtually any inhabited system in the local galactic arm. Inspector, Barnes said quietly, what would happen if someone attacked your homeworld? Our defense fleets would engage them, Zekthara answered automatically. Our orbital platforms would provide fire support. Our planetary shields would protect the surface while we fought. And if you lost, then our world would be conquered or destroyed. Exactly, Morrison nodded. You fight to protect what you have, but what if instead of waiting for someone to attack you, you made it clear that attacking you would mean the complete destruction of everything they care about? Zekthara's mandibles began clicking rapidly as she processed this concept. You mean retaliation? More than that, Barnes said, manipulating the display to show attack routes from human positions to various alien homeworlds. We mean the absolute certainty that anyone who harms Earth will lose everything they have ever built. The inspector studied the tactical display with growing alarm. Human ships were positioned to strike at the homeworlds of every major species in the Federation. Not to defend them, but to attack them if necessary. This is your defense, she asked. The threat of total warfare? Not total warfare, Morrison corrected. Total victory. If someone is foolish enough to attack Earth, we won't just fight them off. We'll hunt down every ship they have, destroy every station they've built, and make sure they can never threaten anyone again. Barnes pulled up another display showing human industrial capacity. Inspector, we don't build defensive platforms because we don't need them. We build attack ships because they're more useful. One defensive platform can protect a small area. One attack ship can eliminate threats across an entire sector. Zekthara felt a chill run through her exoskeleton. She had seen the military records of every Federation species. None of them thought like this. They all built defenses and hoped they would be enough. The humans had rejected that entire concept. You protect Earth by threatening to destroy anyone who attacks it, she said slowly. We protect Earth by making it clear that attacking Earth is suicide, Morrison replied. Not just for the attacking fleet, but for their entire civilization. The inspector looked around the command center with new eyes. These humans weren't unprepared for war. They were prepared for something much more frightening. They were prepared to win so completely that no one would ever dare challenge them again. Your defensive philosophy is offense, she realized. Exactly, Barnes smiled. We believe the best defense is making sure your enemies are too dead to attack you. Zekthara's tablet trembled in her hands as she considered the implications. Every other species in the galaxy built walls and hoped they would hold. Humans had built the most terrifying military machine she had ever encountered, one designed not to defend, but to utterly annihilate any threat. And they were smiling while they explained it. Admiral Barnes led Inspector Zekthara to her private office aboard the orbital command station. The room was simple but impressive, with large windows showing the curve of Earth below, and walls covered with tactical displays. Each screen showed different sectors of human space with red dots marking the positions of their ships scattered across dozens of star systems. Zekthara settled into a chair designed for her species while Barnes sat behind her desk. The inspector's compound eyes studied the displays with growing concern. She had never seen a military arrangement like this before. Admiral Barnes, Zekthara began, her mandibles clicking nervously. I have inspected the defenses of 47 Federation worlds. Every single one follows the same basic pattern. They build shields, weapons platforms, and fortress stations around their most important planets. But you have none of these things. Barnes nodded and touched a control on her desk. The wall displays changed to show holographic images of various alien homeworlds. Each one was surrounded by layers of defensive structures. Massive orbital platforms bristled with weapons. Energy shields covered entire planets like glowing bubbles. Fortress stations guarded every major approach route. "You're absolutely right, Inspector," Barnes said calmly. "Those are all excellent defensive systems. The Krillian shield networks can stop almost any attack. The Vorthak battle stations are nearly impossible to destroy. The Zentari orbital fortresses have held off invasions for centuries." "Then why do you not build similar defenses?" Zekathara asked. Before Barnes could answer, the office door opened and Commander Rick Hayes entered. He was a tall human male with dark hair and serious brown eyes. Hayes carried a datapad and wore the same blue uniform as the other officers, but with different insignia marking him as a tactical specialist. "Commander Hayes is my senior tactical advisor," Barnes explained. "He studied the military doctrines of every species in the Federation." Hayes set his datapad on the desk and activated a holographic projector. Images appeared in the air between them showing battle formations and defensive layouts. "Inspector," Hayes began, "every species you've inspected thinks the same way about warfare. They assume that conflict is inevitable, so they try to make their important worlds as hard to attack as possible. It's logical, predictable, and ultimately defensive thinking." The hologram changed to show a typical alien defensive battle. Enemy ships approached a heavily fortified world, engaged the defensive platforms, and fought a long battle trying to break through the shields and weapons surrounding the planet. "This kind of warfare can last for months or even years," Hayes continued. "The attackers try to wear down the defenses while the defenders try to outlast the siege. Sometimes the defenders win, sometimes the attackers break through. Either way, both sides lose ships, people, and resources." Zekathara's mandibles clicked in agreement. "Yes, this is the nature of warfare. It is unfortunate but necessary." "But what if there was another way?" Barnes asked. The office door opened again, and Lieutenant Colonel Amy Johnson walked in. She was a human female with short blonde hair and bright blue eyes. Her uniform showed the marks of recent deep space duty, and she moved with the confident stride of someone who had spent years commanding warships. "Colonel Johnson just returned from a patrol mission in the Outer Rim," Barnes explained. "Amy, would you tell the inspector about your recent encounter with the Razak pirates?" Johnson pulled up a chair and sat down facing Zekathara. "2 weeks ago, we received word that Razak pirates were planning to raid human shipping in the Kepler sector. A convoy of our merchant ships was scheduled to pass through that area." "What did you do?" Zekathara asked. "We didn't wait for them to attack the convoy," Johnson replied. "Instead, we traced the pirates back to their base of operations in the Vega system. My squadron jumped there and destroyed their entire fleet while they were still planning their raid." Zekathara's compound eyes glittered with confusion. "But the convoy was in the Kepler sector. Why did you not defend it directly?" "Because defending the convoy would have meant fighting them when and where they chose," Johnson explained. "By attacking their base first, we eliminated the threat before it could become a problem." Barnes touched her desk controls again, and the holographic display changed to show the actual mission. Red dots representing human ships moved quickly from their starting positions to the pirate base, struck fast and hard, then dispersed back to their patrol routes. "This is our philosophy, Inspector," Barnes said. "We don't wait for problems to come to us. We go out and solve them before they become serious threats." Hayes stood up and moved to one of the wall displays. "Every defensive war is reactive. You wait for the enemy to make the first move, then try to counter it. But offensive warfare is proactive. You choose when, where, and how the fighting happens." "But surely you cannot attack everyone who might threaten you," Zekathara protested. "That would mean constant warfare." "Actually, it means much less warfare," Johnson replied. "When potential enemies know that threatening humanity means facing immediate and overwhelming retaliation, most of them choose not to threaten us at all." Barnes pulled up another display showing diplomatic communications between Earth and various alien governments. "In the past year, we've received 37 potential threats or hostile messages from different groups. Do you know how many of them actually followed through with aggressive action?" "How many?" Zekthara asked. 0, Barnes replied. Because we made it clear that any aggressive action would result in the complete destruction of whoever was foolish enough to attack us. The inspector studied the communications logs, her mandibles clicking rapidly as she processed the information. Most of the threatening messages were followed by quick diplomatic retractions and apologies. You see, Inspector, Hayes explained, defensive thinking assumes that war is inevitable and tries to minimize the damage when it happens. Offensive thinking makes war so costly for the aggressor that it becomes unthinkable. But what about your own losses? Zekthara asked. Offensive operations are dangerous. You must lose many ships and soldiers. Johnson laughed, a sound that made the inspector's exoskeleton tingle with unease. Ma'am, we've had fewer casualties in the past 5 years than most species have in a typical defensive battle. When you strike first, strike hard, and strike with overwhelming force, the enemy doesn't get many chances to fight back. Barnes brought up a tactical analysis on the main display. Look at this comparison, Inspector. The Valdorian Empire lost over 2 million soldiers defending their homeworld from the Kektar invasion 3 years ago. They won the battle, but at enormous cost. I remember that conflict, Zekthara said. It was considered a great defensive victory. Now look at our casualties from all operations in the same time period, Barnes continued. The numbers that appeared made Zekthara's compound eyes widen in shock. Human losses were less than 1% of what the Valdorians had suffered in their single defensive battle. How is this possible, she asked. Because we don't fight defensive battles, Hayes replied. When someone threatens us, we don't wait for them to attack and then try to stop them. We destroy their ability to threaten anyone before they know. We're coming. Johnson stood up and moved to the window overlooking Earth. Inspector, imagine if someone decided to attack your homeworld tomorrow. What would happen? Our defense fleets would mobilize, Zekthara answered automatically. Our orbital platforms would engage the enemy. We would fight to protect our world. And how many of your people would die in that battle? Zekthara considered the question. Many thousands, perhaps millions, depending on the size of the attacking force. Now imagine if someone decided to attack Earth tomorrow, Johnson continued. What would happen? Barnes smiled coldly. Within 6 hours, every world station and ship belonging to the attacking species would be under assault by human forces. Within 24 hours, their entire civilization would cease to exist. That is genocide, Zekthara whispered. No, Hayes corrected. That is deterrence. Because everyone knows what would happen, no one is foolish enough to attack us in the first place. The inspector looked around the room at the 3 human officers. They weren't boasting or making threats, they were simply explaining their military doctrine as calmly as they might discuss the weather. You have made yourselves so dangerous that no one dares to fight you, she realized. Exactly, Barnes nodded. We protect Earth not with shields or fortresses, but with the absolute certainty that attacking us means choosing extinction over existence. Zekthara's tablet trembled in her hands as she began to understand the true nature of human military thinking. They hadn't just rejected defensive warfare. They had made it obsolete through the promise of total offensive response. This is why you have no defense grid, she said slowly. This is why we don't need one, Barnes replied. Our defense is the knowledge that we can and will destroy anyone who threatens us, anywhere in the galaxy at any time. The inspector realized she wasn't just looking at a different military strategy. She was looking at an entirely new way of thinking about warfare itself. Admiral Barnes stood in the main command center of Luna Station, watching dozens of technicians prepare for the largest military exercise Earth had ever conducted. Inspector Zekthara sat at a special observation station, her compound eyes focused on the massive holographic display that filled the center of the room. Inspector, Barnes said, talking about our military doctrine is one thing. Seeing it in action is another. Today we're going to show you exactly how humanity defends itself. The exercise was designed to simulate a full-scale invasion of the Sol system. Computer-controlled drone ships would play the role of an enemy, fleet attacking Earth, while real human vessels throughout the galaxy would respond as if the threat were genuine. Only the weapons would be set to training mode. Lieutenant Colonel Johnson approached the command station, where Barnes and the inspector waited. "Admiral, all ships are in position and ready. We have 47 vessels participating across 17 different star systems." "What kind of enemy are we simulating?" Zekthara asked. Barnes touched a control, and the display showed a formation of red dots moving toward Earth from the outer system. A typical invasion force, 200 ships including battleships, cruisers, and support vessels. Based on standard Kektar fleet composition, designed for planetary bombardment. The inspector studied the enemy formation. It was exactly the kind of force that would require months of defensive fighting for most Federation worlds to repel. The attacking ships were arranged in the classic invasion pattern, with heavy battleships in front to break through orbital defenses, followed by bombardment vessels to attack the planet's surface. "In a normal defensive scenario," Johnson explained, "we would mobilize our home fleet, position ships around Earth, and wait for them to arrive. Then we would fight a long battle trying to stop them from reaching the planet." "That is the correct strategy," Zekthara agreed. "How else would you defend your homeworld?" Barnes smiled. "Watch and learn." The simulation began. The enemy fleet started its approach to Earth, moving at standard invasion speed. They would reach the inner system in approximately 6 hours, giving the defenders time to prepare their response. But instead of mobilizing ships around Earth, something completely different happened. Throughout human space, vessels that had been on routine patrol suddenly changed course and jumped to hyperspace. The display showed dozens of blue dots representing human ships moving not toward Earth, but toward targets scattered across the galaxy. Captain Steve Collins commanded the human cruiser Vigilant, stationed near the Alpha Centauri system. When the exercise began, his ship received orders that would have shocked any other species in the Federation. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Sandra Miller from the weapons station, "we have target coordinates for the enemy home system. Orders are to proceed immediately and engage all military installations." Collins nodded grimly. "You heard the lady. All hands to battle stations. We're going hunting." The Vigilant jumped to hyperspace, along with 12 other human ships from the same sector. Their destination was not Earth, where the battle was supposedly taking place, but a star system 400 light-years away, where the simulated enemy species had their homeworld. Zekthara watched in amazement as the tactical display showed human ships scattering in all directions. Instead of concentrating their forces to defend Earth, they were spreading out to attack targets across half the galaxy. "I do not understand," she said, her mandibles clicking with confusion. "The enemy is attacking your homeworld. Why are your ships moving away from it?" "Because," Barnes replied calmly, "we're not going to fight a defensive battle. We're going to win an offensive war." The display changed to show multiple star systems simultaneously. In each one, human ships were approaching targets marked as enemy installations. Supply depots, shipyards, military bases, and even civilian infrastructure were all being targeted for immediate destruction. Commander Paul Rodriguez piloted his scout ship through the outer edge of a system containing a major enemy supply depot. His sensors detected massive stockpiles of weapons, fuel, and equipment that would support the invasion fleet for months. "Control, this is Rodriguez," he reported over the communication system. "Target confirmed. Enemy supply depot contains enough resources to sustain their entire fleet. Requesting permission to engage." "Permission granted," came the reply from Luna Station. "Destroy everything." Rodriguez's ship launched a spread of torpedoes that turned the supply depot into expanding clouds of debris. At the same time, human ships throughout the galaxy were conducting identical attacks on every piece of infrastructure supporting the enemy war effort. Zekthara began to understand what she was witnessing. "You are attacking their home systems while they attack yours." "Exactly," Johnson replied. "But we're not just attacking their military targets. We're destroying their entire civilization's ability to function." The display showed the results of the human counterattack. Within 2 hours of the exercise beginning, the simulated enemy had lost 60% of their industrial capacity, all of their major supply depots, and most of their home defense fleet. The ships attacking Earth suddenly found themselves cut off from all support. But the human response was just getting started. Ships that had destroyed their initial targets didn't return to defend Earth. Instead, they moved to secondary targets, systematically dismantling every aspect of the enemy civilization. Captain Collins stood on the bridge of the Vigilant as his ship approached the enemy homeworld. The planet's orbital defenses had already been destroyed by other human vessels, leaving it completely vulnerable. "Sir," Lieutenant Miller reported, "enemy home fleet is attempting to return to defend their planet. Estimated arrival time is 8 hours. Too little, too late," Collins replied. "Begin bombardment of all military and industrial targets on the surface. Make sure they understand that attacking humanity was the worst mistake their species ever made." The simulation continued for 6 hours. By the time it ended, the enemy invasion fleet was still 3 hours away from reaching Earth. But their entire civilization had been destroyed. Every ship, station, factory, and military installation belonging to their species had been reduced to wreckage. "Exercise complete," Barnes announced to the command center. "Final casualty reports coming in now." The numbers appeared on the main display. The simulated enemy had lost everything: 100% of their infrastructure, 98% of their military forces, and their entire ability to continue the war. Human losses were minimal: 3 ships damaged, 0 ships destroyed, total casualties under 50 personnel. Zekthara stared at the numbers in disbelief. "This is impossible. You destroyed an entire civilization in 6 hours." "We could have done it faster," Johnson replied matter-of-factly. "But we wanted to be thorough." Barnes pulled up a tactical analysis of the exercise. "Inspector, this is why we don't build defensive platforms around Earth. Any enemy fleet that approaches our homeworld isn't just facing our local defenses. They're facing the complete annihilation of everything they've ever built." The inspector's tablet shook in her hands as she processed what she had witnessed. "But the invasion fleet still reached your system. They could still attack Earth, could they?" Barnes asked, pointing to the display. "Look at their situation. Their homeworld is in ruins. Their supply lines are cut. Their reinforcements are destroyed. Even if they somehow manage to damage Earth, what would they return to? Nothing." Collins' voice came over the communication system from his ship near the enemy homeworld. "Control, this is Vigilant. Enemy home fleet has arrived and is surveying the wreckage of their planet. They're requesting permission to surrender." "Tell them surrender was an option 6 hours ago," Barnes replied coldly. "Now their only choice is extinction or retreat. And if they retreat, we'll hunt them down wherever they go." Zekthara realized that she wasn't just watching a military exercise. She was seeing a demonstration of humanity's ultimate weapon, not any particular ship or bomb, but their willingness to completely destroy anyone who threatened them. "This is your defense," she whispered. "The certainty that attacking you means choosing death. Now you're beginning to understand." Barnes nodded. "We don't protect Earth with shields or fortresses. We protect it with the absolute knowledge that anyone foolish enough to attack us will lose everything they care about." The inspector looked around the command center at the human officers calmly discussing the complete destruction of an entire civilization as if it were a routine training exercise. She finally understood why Earth had no defense grid. They didn't need one. They had something much more effective: the promise of total annihilation for anyone who dared to threaten them. 3 days after the military demonstration, Inspector Zekthara found herself in the Pentagon on Earth's surface, sitting across from General Frank Cooper in his private office. The general was an older human male with silver hair and weathered hands that spoke of decades of military service. His office walls were covered with maps of human space and photographs of various military operations. Zekthara had requested this private meeting because she needed to understand something that troubled her deeply. The demonstration had shown her how humanity fought, but she still didn't understand why they had chosen such a terrifying approach to warfare. "General Cooper," she began, her mandibles clicking nervously, "I have seen your military capabilities. They are unlike anything in the Federation. But I must ask, how did your species develop such a doctrine? Most civilizations learn to build defenses first." Cooper leaned back in his chair and studied the inspector for a moment. That's a fair question, Inspector. The answer goes back to our history long before we reached the stars. The office door opened and Major Kate Sullivan entered, carrying a data pad and a cup of coffee. She was a human female, with dark hair pulled back in, a tight bun and intelligent brown eyes behind thin glasses. Her uniform marked her as a specialist in xenomilitary analysis. Major Sullivan has studied the military doctrines of every species in the Federation, Cooper explained. She can give you some context for understanding how we think differently. Sullivan set her coffee on the desk and activated a holographic projector. Images appeared showing various battles throughout human history, from ancient warfare to modern space conflicts. Inspector, Sullivan began. Every species we've encountered learned the same lesson from their early wars. They discovered that building strong defenses could protect their homes, so they focused on making better walls, stronger shields, and more powerful defensive weapons. The hologram showed examples of alien defensive thinking. Massive fortifications, orbital platforms, and energy shields surrounded important worlds throughout the galaxy. But humans learned a different lesson, Sullivan continued. We discovered that the best way to protect ourselves wasn't to build better defenses, but to make sure our enemies couldn't attack us in the first place. Cooper stood up and moved to a window overlooking the city below. Inspector, let me tell you about a war that happened on Earth over 2 centuries ago. 2 groups of humans were fighting over territory, and one side built enormous defensive walls around their cities. The walls were incredibly strong. They could have held off any direct attack. What happened? Zekthara asked. The other side didn't attack the walls, Cooper replied. Instead, they destroyed the farms that fed the cities, the factories that made weapons, and the roads that carried supplies. The people behind the walls starved while their enemies grew stronger. Sullivan pulled up more historical examples. This pattern repeated throughout human history. Defensive thinking focuses on protecting what you have, but offensive thinking focuses on destroying your enemy's ability to threaten you. The inspector studied the historical data with growing understanding. Your species learned that attacking the enemy's resources is more effective than defending your own. Exactly, Cooper nodded. But we took that lesson much further than just tactics. We built our entire military philosophy around it. Captain Dan Foster entered the office, carrying several data tablets. He was a younger human male with short, brown hair and alert blue eyes. His recent promotion showed in the crisp new insignia on his uniform. Captain Foster runs our early warning networks, Cooper explained. Dan, tell the inspector about Project Watchdog. Foster set his tablets on the desk and brought up a new holographic display. This one showed the entire local galactic arm with thousands of tiny dots representing monitoring stations scattered throughout space. Inspector, Foster began, we have sensors positioned in every major star system within 300 light-years of Earth. They're designed to detect any military buildup or hostile preparation against human interests. But these are not in human territory, Zekthara observed, studying the display. You have monitoring stations in the space of dozens of other species. That's correct, Foster replied calmly. We monitor everyone who might pose a threat to humanity. The moment any species begins preparing for military action against us, we know about it. Sullivan pulled up another display showing how the information flowed from the monitoring stations to human command centers. Inspector, most species wait until they're attacked before they respond. We prefer to know about threats while they're still being planned. This gives you time to prepare your defenses, Zekthara suggested. No, Cooper said, returning to his seat. This gives us time to eliminate the threat before it becomes dangerous. The general activated another holographic display showing several recent incidents. 6 months ago, our sensors detected unusual military activity in the Helix Nebula. The Korthak were building a large fleet and conducting exercises near human trade routes. What did you do? The inspector asked. Foster answered. We sent a diplomatic message asking about their intentions. When they claimed it was routine training, we sent Captain Wilson and a small squadron to observe their exercises. The Korthak didn't like being watched, Sullivan continued. They demanded that our ships leave and threatened to attack them if they didn't. That was their mistake, Cooper said grimly. The moment they threatened human vessels, they crossed a line that we don't allow anyone to cross. The holographic display showed what happened next. Within hours of the threat being made, human ships from across the sector converged on Korthak space. Every military installation, shipyard, and fleet base belonging to their species was simultaneously attacked and destroyed. You eliminated their entire military capability because they threatened one of your squadrons? Zekthara asked in amazement. We eliminated their ability to threaten anyone, Cooper corrected. Inspector, we learned long ago that half measures in warfare only lead to bigger conflicts later. If someone is foolish enough to threaten humanity, we make sure they can never do it again. Sullivan brought up casualty figures from the operation. The Korthak lost 90% of their military forces in less than 4 hours. Human casualties were 0. But surely this creates enemies, Zekthara protested. Other species must fear and hate you for such actions. Foster laughed, a sound that made the inspector's exoskeleton tingle with unease. Inspector, the Korthak are actually grateful to us now. We destroyed their military but left their civilian infrastructure intact. Their people no longer have to support a massive military budget, and they've redirected their resources into trade and science. More importantly, Cooper added, every other species in the galaxy got the message. No one threatens humanity anymore because they've seen what happens when someone does. The general pulled up a final display showing diplomatic communications between Earth and dozens of alien governments. Look at these messages, Inspector. Trade requests, scientific collaboration proposals, cultural exchange programs. Everyone wants to be humanity's friend now. Because they're afraid of you, Zekthara observed. Because they respect us, Sullivan corrected. Fear is temporary. Respect based on demonstrated capability lasts much longer. Cooper stood up and walked to a wall covered with photographs of human military operations. Inspector, every species in the Federation has enemies. The Valdorians are constantly fighting border skirmishes with the Zentari. The Krillians have been in a cold war with the Vorthak for decades. The Kektar raid shipping lanes throughout their region. But humans have no enemies, Foster added. Not because we're peaceful, but because we've made it clear that being our enemy means choosing extinction. Zekthara's tablet trembled as she processed this information. You have achieved peace through overwhelming superiority. We've achieved peace through absolute deterrence, Cooper replied. Inspector, would you rather live in a galaxy where wars drag on for years with millions of casualties, or one where conflicts end immediately because everyone knows the cost of starting them? The inspector looked around the room at the 3 human officers. They weren't monsters or warmongers. They were professionals who had found a way to prevent large-scale warfare by making it too costly for anyone to contemplate. This is why the Federation asked you to join, she realized. Not because you needed protection, but because everyone else needs protection from potential threats. Now you're beginning to understand our true role in galactic security. Cooper smiled. We're not just another member species. We're the Federation's ultimate deterrent against large-scale warfare. Sullivan gathered her data tablets. Inspector, humanity didn't reject defensive thinking because we're aggressive. We rejected it because we found something that works better, making war so costly that no rational species would choose it. Zekthara understood now why Earth had no defense grid. They had something far more effective than any defensive system ever built. They had made themselves so dangerous that attacking them was tantamount to suicide, protecting not just Earth but ensuring galactic stability through the threat of overwhelming retaliation. 6 months after her inspection of Earth, Inspector Zekthara stood before the Federation Security Council on Nexus Prime, the capital world of the Galactic Federation. The massive chamber was filled with representatives from 47 different species, each sitting in specially designed seats that accommodated their unique physiologies. The air hummed with translation devices, converting her words into dozens of alien languages. Council leader Vorthan presided over the session from his elevated platform. He was a massive creature with thick purple skin and tentacles that moved constantly as he spoke. His deep voice carried the authority of someone who had led the Federation for over a century. Inspector Zekthara, Vorthon announced to the assembly. You have completed your evaluation of Earth's defensive capabilities. Please present your findings to the Council. Zekathara activated her presentation device, and holographic displays appeared throughout the chamber. The assembled delegates leaned forward in their seats, eager to hear about humanity's military arrangements. Many had heard rumors that Earth lacked proper defenses, and they wanted to know if the humans posed a security risk to the Federation. Honored Council members, Zekathara began, her mandibles clicking as she spoke. I have spent 6 months studying human military doctrine and capabilities. What I discovered challenges everything we thought we knew about galactic defense. The first image showed Earth from space looking peaceful and undefended. No orbital platforms surrounded the planet. No energy shields protected it from attack. No fortress stations guarded the approaches to the system. As you can see, Zekathara continued, Earth appears completely vulnerable to attack. Any hostile fleet could approach the human homeworld without encountering significant defensive obstacles. Murmurs of concern rippled through the chamber. Several delegates began whispering among themselves, clearly worried about humanity's apparent military weakness. However, Zekathara said, raising her voice to quiet the discussion, this appearance is completely deceiving. The humans have not failed to build adequate defenses. They have created something far more effective than any defensive system in Federation history. The display changed to show the positions of human ships throughout the galaxy. Red dots marked thousands of vessels scattered across dozens of star systems, positioned not around Earth but at strategic points throughout human space. In the human delegation section, General Cooper sat calmly beside Ambassador Helen Carter, Earth's chief diplomatic representative. Carter was a middle-aged human female with gray hair and intelligent green eyes that missed nothing. She had been watching the other delegates' reactions carefully, noting which species seemed most concerned about human military capabilities. The humans have achieved something unprecedented in galactic warfare, Zekathara continued. They have made their homeworld effectively invulnerable, not through defensive measures but through the absolute certainty that any attack upon it would result in the complete destruction of the attacking species. The chamber erupted in shocked chittering, buzzing, and other alien expressions of alarm. Many delegates had never heard of such a military doctrine before. The Valdorian representative, a tall being with silver skin and multiple arms, stood up on his tentacled legs. Inspector, surely you exaggerate. No species would threaten complete genocide as a defensive measure. General Cooper rose from his seat in the human delegation area. Honored delegate, we don't threaten genocide, we promise extinction. There's an important difference. What difference? Demanded the Krillian ambassador, an insectoid creature with razor-sharp claws. Genocide targets civilian populations, Cooper replied calmly. Extinction targets the entire military and industrial capability of a hostile species. We don't murder innocents. We destroy the ability to make war. Zekathara activated another display showing the results of the military exercise she had witnessed. Council members, I observed a demonstration of human rapid response capabilities. A simulated enemy fleet approaching Earth was countered not by local defenses, but by simultaneous strikes against every military installation belonging to the attacking species. The numbers appeared on the display, and several delegates gasped audibly. The simulated enemy had lost everything in less than 6 hours while inflicting virtually no damage on human forces. This is madness, clicked the Zentari representative, a crystalline being whose voice rang like breaking glass. They have turned warfare into annihilation. Ambassador Carter stood up beside General Cooper. Honored delegates, we have turned warfare into deterrence. When potential enemies know that attacking humanity means losing everything they have built, most choose not to attack at all. But what about proportional response? Asked the Korthak delegate, a furry creature with large eyes. Surely destroying an entire civilization is excessive retaliation for a limited attack. Cooper's expression hardened. Delegate, there is no such thing as a limited attack on Earth. Anyone who threatens our homeworld has declared their intention to destroy our entire species. We respond accordingly. Zekthara brought up diplomatic records showing communications between Earth and various alien governments. Council members, I have reviewed humanity's recent diplomatic history. In the past year, they received 37 potential threats from different groups. None of these threats resulted in actual hostile action. Because the threatening parties realize the consequences, Carter added. Most conflicts end before they begin when everyone understands the cost of starting them. The massive council leader Vorthon extended his tentacles for attention. Inspector Zekthara, what is your official recommendation regarding Earth's defensive requirements? Zekthara's compound eyes swept across the chamber, taking in the concerned faces of dozens of species. Council leader, I recommend that Earth be exempted from all standard defensive requirements. Their offensive capabilities constitute more than adequate protection for their territory. Exempted? The hegemony representative, a gaseous being speaking through a mechanical translator, seemed shocked. But what if their doctrine fails? What if someone actually attacks them? General Cooper smiled coldly. Then that someone will serve as an example to everyone else of why attacking humanity is a fatal mistake. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Many delegates were beginning to understand that humanity hadn't just joined the Federation as another member species. They had become something much more significant. Honored Council, Carter said, addressing the entire assembly. Humanity seeks peace through strength. We don't want to fight wars. We want to make war so costly that no rational species would choose it. Zekthara activated her final display, showing casualty statistics from recent conflicts throughout the galaxy. Council members, in the 5 years since humanity began projecting military force beyond their home system, galaxy-wide military casualties have decreased by 73%. The numbers were undeniable. Fewer beings were dying in wars because potential aggressors were choosing diplomatic solutions rather than face human retaliation. Admiral Barnes, who had arrived from Earth for the council session, stood up in the human delegation. Honored delegates, we offer the Federation something it has never had before. The guarantee that large-scale warfare will result in swift and total defeat for the aggressor. You're asking us to accept you as the Federation's ultimate weapon, observed the synthetic intelligence representative, a mechanical being with glowing optical sensors. We're offering to serve as the Federation's ultimate deterrent, Cooper corrected. There's a difference between a weapon and a deterrent. Weapons are used to fight wars. Deterrents prevent wars from starting. Council leader Vorthon called for order as discussion broke out throughout the chamber. The council will now vote on Inspector Zekthara's recommendation to exempt Earth from standard defensive requirements. The vote was unanimous. Every species in the Federation agreed that humanity's offensive capabilities provided adequate protection, officially recognizing that Earth's approach to defense was not just acceptable, but effective. As the session ended, several delegates quietly approached the human delegation to discuss security arrangements for their own regions. They had realized that having humanity as an ally was far preferable to having them as an enemy. Zekthara gathered her equipment as the chamber emptied, reflecting on what humanity had achieved. They had become the Federation's ultimate deterrent simply by being too dangerous to attack. Their defense was the promise of overwhelming retaliation, and that promise had brought more peace to the galaxy than centuries of traditional defensive thinking. Inspector, General Cooper said, approaching her as she prepared to leave. Thank you for understanding what we're trying to accomplish. General, she replied, her mandibles clicking thoughtfully. I think the entire galaxy is beginning to understand. You have made yourselves the guardians of galactic peace through the simple expedient of being absolutely terrifying to anyone who threatens it. Cooper smiled. Sometimes the best way to protect everyone is to make sure the bad guys know exactly what will happen if they step out of line.